welcome back to the wonderful world of organic chemistry. Today we are doing proteins, the mini mechanical machines of our body. They're basically organic molecules. They've got carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen, like the carbohydrates and lipids we've already talked about. And we add in one new element, nitrogen, right there, nitrogen, into this one. Okay. They are polymers or chains of amino acids. So amino acids, often abbreviated AA, are their monomers, and that's what we have a structure over here, and Kemmer is going to be talking about those a little bit more in a minute. But all proteins are chains of those. So you take your individual amino acid, you put it together to make a chain, and that chain would be the protein. And there are 20 different amino acids. Take it away, Mr. Kemmerer.
Yeah, so Hamele was talking about the structure, and I just want to point out at the beginning here, this is something that we would expect you to be able to identify in a test situation. Give you a picture of an amino acid, give you a picture of glucose and a lipid, and you'd be able to tell us which one is which. So just so you're aware on that one. Not that I like giving away test answers. But the relationship is monomer polymer, like we've been talking about this whole time. We've got individual piece, and that is what you're looking at right here. The amino acid is the monomer for proteins. And Hamele was mentioning that we do have carbon, hydrogen, oxygen like we did before. We've got this new element in there, nitrogen, that we didn't see in the previous ones. And that's where the term amino acid comes from. That nitrogen end of it there is an amino group. It's just a chemistry name for things. You don't really need to worry about that. And then the acid comes from the carboxylic acid group on the other end. Now, you might be noticing this R there, and you're looking at your periodic table and you're going R, R, R. That R doesn't stand for a particular element. What it's representing is a side chain or a collection of elements that are attached to each amino acid. Hamele mentioned on the previous slide that amino acids, there are 20 different amino acids occurring in biological beings like us. And the reason that there are 20 different ones is each of those 20 different amino acids has a different side chain that R is representing there. So I think on the next slide, unless there's something I missed on that one that you guys can think of, it's just a real quick picture of the 20 amino acids and their side chains shown their little chemical structure. Do not worry about this. You do not need to know any of this stuff for the test, apart from there are 20 different amino acids with different side groups. But some of the side groups are big, some of them are small, some of them have positive charge, some of them have negative charge, some of them are hydrophilic, some are hydrophobic. And that's important. In just a little bit here, we're going to talk about the structure of proteins and the different side chains interacting with each other chemically and with their surroundings are what give proteins in part their structure.
So speaking of structure, okay, so Mr. Hamele set us up, he told us about these amino acids and said these are our monomers. So we looked at the structure of one amino acid. Once we start putting these things together into a polymer, right, more than one, the first kind of way we do that is to put them into chains. So Mr. Kemmerer and Mr. Hamele are showing you some different examples. We're adding these amino acids together to form a chain, and the order of those amino acids is very important. That kind of helps determine what sort of protein we're looking at. So first, we get them in a nice little chain. They're in a very specific order. Then the next step, or the secondary step here, is we're going to start twisting and folding to get our final protein shape. So we take that chain of amino acids, that's kind of our first level, and then our second and third levels here, secondary, tertiary, we fold it up into this kind of complex shape. And that shape is what allows the protein to do its job, to carry out its function. So not only is the order of those amino acids important, but that twisting, that folding, that final shape is really what determines what that protein is able to do. Lovely, Kemmerer. Okay, so I believe here, yeah.
I'm sorry, no, I repeat this over and over and over again. And if the students were here with us now, it's kind of like a chant. I say shape, you say function. shape function sort of thing. The shape related to the function is a really important concept for enzymes, for proteins, as well as many other things in science. But I just want to make sure students, that's one thing you have to lock away, that the shape determines the function. Sorry.
Well, let's do it with them at home. Pretend we're Dora the Explorer. Come on.
Just give it a pause.
Go for it, Kemmer.
Okay, I'm going to say shape. You say function. Ready? Shape. 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 Hey, well done.
Yay! We did it. We
I just
did
have to
it.
write that down in my handy dandy notebook.
Whoa,
That's
you're
Blue's
you're
Clues.
mixing cartoons there, man.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Dora would stick it in her backpack.
Yeah. With her map.
And boots. All right.
Hmm. Okay. That was an animation of things folding up and twisting and stuff. In case we didn't talk about that even, but we start with a chain and then it kind of moves around and gets twisted and folded all up into a protein. There you have it.
And that twisting and folding is happening due to the side chains of the R groups on the different amino acids interacting with each other in their environment. We were getting really technical. There are things like chaperone proteins that help proteins fold into shape, but that's beyond what we're talking about here. So pretend I didn't
Ignore
say.
half of what Kemmer's telling you. So. But you should probably do the same when I tell you stuff too. So here's an example of hemoglobin, or a part of a hemoglobin molecule. And hemoglobin is the molecule found in your red blood cells that has the right shape and properties to grab onto oxygen and carry it around in your blood. So here we've got this hemoglobin. In the middle there is the heme group with iron in it. That's why you need iron in your diet, and why you can become anemic if you don't have enough iron, because you're not able to make this molecule because you don't have that iron in the middle. And if you can't do that, you're not able to grab oxygen. So you can kind of think of it looks like a Pac-Man, right? So we got, get off to the side here. So we got, here's the hemoglobin, here's the oxygen. Hemoglobin is the right shape for oxygen to fit onto it, and it can actually change its shape slightly and grab on a little more firmly. And then it'll carry that oxygen around in your bloodstream to your muscles, and your muscles are giving off some carbon dioxide. And so that carbon dioxide is going to trigger the hemoglobin to let go of the oxygen, and the oxygen is going to get let go and travel into your muscles where it's needed. So once again, it's the shape and chemical properties of this protein that allow it to do its job. I say shape, you say.
Maybe we got to make sure that doesn't look like it's a bad word or something like that.
It did when you said it. I'm hoping it didn't when I said it. Just got the F part there.
Somebody's going to edit this and add it in. I shouldn't even give them the idea.
Yeah, that's not too good. Got to be
So
careful.
here is another example of shape. Proteins are basically like little molecular machines. If we were like on Miss Frizzle's bus, and she could get us down to the size where we could see these molecules in action in our body, they would look like little machines, little mechanical things like water wheels and pumps and ramps and tunnels and all sorts of cool stuff.
Bungee cords.
Bungee cords. And just like the stapler has a very specific shape that allows it to do its job, so does the protein. And at the molecular level, you'd actually see this moving and changing its shape to get the job done. Now, if I stuck this underneath a tractor and rolled over it and squished it, I'd mess up the shape. Do you think it would still work, Miss Ripley?
Maybe there'd be like a really small chance that it maybe could. It depends on how, the quality of your stapler.
Is it a John Deere or a Farmall?
That's true. We don't have all the answers here, Hamele. You're not giving us all the data.
Sorry, it's a Farmall. So.
As I was going to say, if it was a John Deere, the tractor would probably be the thing that broke.
Wow.
I just
throwing some shade.
I just alienated the John Deere crowd, but that's because I'm a Farmall fan.
So you got another example of protein shapes, right, Mr. Kemmerer? Or are we
Yes,
saving that one for later? Can't remember.
Or did you want my stapler one?
Oh, sure, go for it.
So even subtle changes in shape. So this stapler does its job, creates a staple, and those staples, I'm gonna do this here. You can see it's folded over on the end, just like a regular staple would. I don't know, apparently this is an old stapler, you can change the shape by rotating this plate here. And now instead of turning the staples in, the shape change causes it to turn the staples out. And subtle change in the shape changes the function a little bit. It's the same thing with the bungee cord here. The hooks, that hook shape on the end allows the bungee cord to do its job. I can hook it around things, secure them. If I change the shape of those hooks, straighten them out, now I can't do the same job with this. I can't hook it around things anymore. So that shape and function relationship is really important.
Okay, so some uses and types of proteins. We'll get into a lot of these, but to start us off, some structural things is ligaments. So ligaments connect bone to bone in your body. An example you might have heard of is your ACL, which everybody's always like tearing is why you hear about it. So you tear your ACL. So basically connecting our bones to our bones. Can also be used for the storage of amino acids, right? Our proteins are all made of these chains of amino acids all together. There we go, the chains, okay. And as Mr. Hamele was describing on the last page with our hemoglobin, again, we can use them to transport things. So hemoglobin, again, latching onto the oxygen, basically, to move oxygen throughout your body, through the bloodstream.
It moves oxygen throughout your body too.
It too. It
Unless
does
they're an
it
alien who
all.
doesn't need it. So
It does it all.
All right. So what we have here, guys, is proteins are used for movement. You probably know, or maybe you know, that when you eat meat, you get a lot of protein, right? Well, what's meat? Meat is muscle, okay? Just like this, meat, okay? And that muscle, yeah,
Just like this.
I gotta zoom in because it's too small. There you go. But that muscle right there, guys, your ability to lift up, say,
10 pounds. Oh.
Criminy, I gotta work out more. But your ability to do that is all down at the molecular level to the movement of proteins. These are the two proteins down here. Where's my pointer go? There it is. These are the two proteins in muscle. We got actin and myosin. You don't need to remember those names right now, but as you can see, what's going on here is that myosin is kind of coming along, and this is the actin. Myosin is coming on and is pulling itself along, and it's actually shortening up. See how my elbows got closer together? That's how your muscles work. So when your brain sends a signal to lift, a 10-pound weight, it activates a certain number of those, and you're able to lift a 10-pound weight. If you want to lift a 100-pound weight, you activate more of those proteins, just like putting more people on a tug of rope, and you can pull 100 pounds or 500 pounds. Or if you're like Kemeter, 1,000 ounces, So
it's a lot of ounces.
It's a lot of ounces. So proteins have this ability to change shape, and we can harness that not just to move things at the molecular level, but to move things at the macro level, big things in the world. It's all proteins changing their shape just a little bit that allows you to move things around.
Is this me? I'm Detense, right?
Yep.
So we've got this is a very timely example of a protein function. Defense in your body, your immune system, as part of the immune response, you can produce antibodies. They're in the image that you're seeing there, the animation, they're the little Y-shaped proteins. And you can produce millions of different types of these antibodies. And each different type has a slightly different shape to it, slightly different chemical properties. And the combination of the different shapes and chemical properties interact with different things inside your body, such as bacteria or viruses. So your immune system can use these antibodies to target and recognize specific infectious agents. Like maybe this is a worse and worse example. I bet Ripley, you probably never had chicken pox, did you?
I had chicken pox.
Did you? You're old enough to have, because I asked this now, and none of the students have had chicken pox.
I gave it to my brother, in fact. My older brother got it from me.
There you go. That sounds about right.
Lovely sister.
the way that, you know, like so the three of us, Hamele, Ripley, and I'm assuming Hamele has, I don't want to give away your medical history either, but you know, like it was encouraged when we were little, get the chicken pox so that your immune system could learn how to recognize it, learn how to make antibodies that could target it. And now we're immune to it, essentially. I mean, if we get infected with it, our immune system can attack it with our antibodies, and you know, we're good to go. And that's, there's a picture of the coronavirus down below. The surface of the coronavirus has all these different proteins, glycoproteins, lipids on it, and our immune systems can learn how to recognize this. That's when they're talking about creating a vaccine that works. What they're trying to do is trying to figure out how to trick our immune systems into producing antibodies that can recognize coronavirus. If we can do that, then we can become immune to it without having to become sick with it. So defense, antibodies, proteins, I guess, is the way to sum up this slide.